Oh, hello. Welcome to the studio. Miles here with the band EMEFE. Glad you're joining us today. Come on in, won't you? Today, we have an episode of EMEFE.ptx, a video podcast series where we open up our Pro Tools sessions and talk about our process. This episode is about our song, Fast Bump. We hope you enjoy. We are talking about a song called Fast Bump by EMEFE. Would it shock you to learn that the genesis of this song was actually in 2011?
Oh my gosh.
Not really, actually. I don't think it shocks me. I think it has a 2011 EMEFE DNA to it.
Fantastic point.
Which I think I think it comes through.
That's a great point. This song, out of any song, I feel was a dipping into the bag of goodies that was maybe gathering some dust for a number of years. It was a well-used bag, one of those tote bags that just loses all of its so used that it loses all of its form, and it's kind of one of the best bags when you want that kind of bag. And it was kind of gathering dust, and it took a global pandemic to kind of remember to like have that bag. Somehow it got it just appeared in the corner of my apartment when we were in lockdown, and it was just looking at me. And this song definitely came out of the first 3 or so months of lockdown in March through May 2020, along with The Dirt and Be Nice. I'd say that I think that's kind of the trio of songs that I wrote on GarageBand in my apartment. It's very similar to how I wrote some of the first EMEFE songs in my dorm room on GarageBand with a kid's keyboard and whatever guitar was there plugged straight into my laptop. And that was the vibe. And this song, I think it makes sense that it was kind of like a relief. It was like, I want to make like a this kind of song. And basically, I say it started in 2011 because there's always been this guitar part that I've always wanted to use for something, but it never took off. We actually rehearsed something way back in the day using this guitar part, but it was a much different song. And I found the original demo of that. So I'm going to play that, and you'll hear, you might hear something you recognize. Let's just put it like that. Anyway, not the MIDI horns. Do either of you remember that? I'd be shocked if you remembered that demo.
I don't think I remember that, no.
I do not remember that demo.
We tried rehearsing it once, and it could have been worked on, but it just kind of fell by the wayside. Anyway.
This was in 2011? We tried working on it? Wow, crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, fast forward to 2020, and I'm back on GarageBand, and that same guitar part, I just repurposed it basically, and then added a second guitar part. So yeah, that is the beginning of where this song started, and um, I thought that it could be fun to with this song specifically. It is, I'd say, the most directly Afrobeat influenced of any of the
Totally.
songs.
Could I could I
Yeah,
just do a quick point of order?
yeah,
Just like for anyone who is unfamiliar with like Afrobeat music in general, the could we just like break down like the reason why or like the function of the two guitar parts and like what their names are and stuff? I think that might be some good context.
yeah. I'd love to. Do you want to get it popping?
um, well, so yeah, so there are traditionally like two guitar parts in Afrobeat music, and they serve two different functions usually, which is one is a kind of like a rhythm part, which is usually higher and incorporates like more chords. And then you have a tenor part, which is usually a little bit lower and features more kind of like single notes, and it's a little bit more pokey and almost like staccato usually. But this could be maybe this could be its own episode of just like Miles talking about Afrobeat guitar because I would listen to that. But I'd love to hear about like the process of which one did you start with, and then if you wrote a second one, like how did that just like what were you thinking about when you wrote the second one when you already had the first one? Um, that part of the like composition process I think would be interesting because at least for me as someone who didn't like grow up around Afrobeat music, and so when I was introduced to it by Miles when I was like I don't know 21 years old, I it was kind of like Afrobeat has two guitars, and I was like, okay, cool. I don't know what that means, and I'm just gonna go with it. And then over time, especially like playing in Intibalas and understanding more and more about like Afrobeat music and the way that like the tapestry is constructed, I feel like I began to understand more like, oh, it's not just two guitars, like they play very specific roles and specifically the way that they highlight like the rhythm, like the clave and how that phrase, that two bar phrase functions in the music. And we've used that in our music like very thoroughly. Like we have a lot of that in basically every single song with a few exceptions. But I always love hearing guitar parts soloed because they're super interesting. Like they all have their own funny characters and energy, and the way that they interlock is one of the most satisfying musical phenomena for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely agree with that.
yeah. And one of the methods by which they lock or don't lock is, like you mentioned, the clave. And in Fela's music, there most of the songs can be distilled down to a 3-2 clave or a 2-3 clave pattern. So 3-2 being da 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 da, and 2-3 being da 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 da. And this is kind of one of the things, and I don't know that that was intentional on Fela's part. Like, I think it's more that's just how things were counted or felt, like how we feel things just straight four often. Um, but yeah, and this is one of the things that differentiates Afrobeat music and also funk music, certain funk music, from other groove slash funk slash jam music, is that the parts that are happening are there is a rhythmic framework that everybody is agreeing on, and there's a compositional element to what's happening as opposed to just playing in a funky way over a beat. However, like one guitar player is playing that, the other, it's like this is like this deeply layered compositional funkiness that is shared by artists like Prince and James Brown and like it just this sort of echelon of funk artists that similarly, yeah, it's just it's there's a metric happening.
And isn't that part of like the Afrobeat lore? Is that Fela like heard James Brown and was like, "That's it! Like, let me do that, but my way," because James
Yeah.
Brown had like two guitars.
Yes.
I've never heard it like specifically. I mean, I'm not a Fela expert by any means, but I've never heard it directly tied to this, but it does remind me of like bata drums, right? So it's like as you were talking about clave, right, and it kind of being inherent in it, like at least for Cuban music, like Fela was Yoruba, right? And like Yoruba, like
Yeah.
so much of the clave that comes into Afro-Cuban and Afro-folklorico music comes from Yoruba tradition, right? And specifically these like bata drums, right?
Mm-hmm.
That do have these kind of like interlocked weaved patterns, right? And those are like very spiritual, very sacred, very traditional drums for Yoruba, which I imagine must be something that was in Fela's ear, like growing up, right? It's something that I've
Mm-hmm.
never actually thought about until actually just now, but it is a similar effect, right, of that kind of rhythm that's rolling over itself and this kind of like interlocking pattern where it's a really wild thing. I think there's few things in music that so much call the other as these things, right? Like where you hear one and it sounds incomplete, and you hear the other and it sounds incomplete, and then you hear the two of them and it's it's complete. It's like so full and so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes, and you're just reminding me. Speaking of that, before we play Fela's stuff, these parts in particular are very much that where like they leave a lot of space for each other in sort of an awkward way. Where like when you just listen to one of them, there is space and it doesn't quite feel it feels a little lopsided, and then the other one fills those blanks. So there's the
mhm.
one side, and the other side.
Yeah.
And then there's the bass part as well. Then all together.
Just sounds like two old ladies talking to each other, just like their conversation.
See, I imagine it as two nerds bickering because this specific type these parts to me are like a little brainy, where it's a little bit like if when I'm writing guitar parts, I'm sort of engaging my brain in certain degrees or not, depending on the part. But this is like a very much like, oh, it's like a little cute. It's like it's like very compositional in a way that it's hard to make that happen accidentally without being like, oh, so that's playing there. So if I play, so yeah, it's
Right.
a little nerdy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's calculated.
whereas other guitar parts are more just kind of straight out of the body, like just this just feels good, so why think too much about this? It's just
Did you have to rewrite the tenor part? Like, was there a tenor part in um, the original 2011 piece?
yeah, it was the bass and the tenor part were different. Um, it's really just the rhythm guitar part that stayed almost exactly the same, just sped up. Yeah,
Was
ultimately,
was
yeah.
that an obvious choice, or did you have to kind of suffer through that a little bit as you were choosing to rework that that old demo?
No, it was obvious because just for the tempo change, it didn't really work how it used to work, and I felt like the rhythm part was the best thing about the that demo, and so it's just a matter of like what is this part inspiring that is more centered around it as opposed to I don't really know where the center was before. Go just switching back to Fela real quick. So this song is an example of also I feel like it's one of Fela's more brainy guitar bass combinations.
That's what it's all about. It's the best. It's just the best. I remember
Yeah.
there was a period, like towards the end of the first iteration, the first phase of this band, right, where we were trying to play. I mean, playing with a 10-piece band has a lot of logistical complexity, right? And I remember towards the end of it, there were, like we were trying to be like a little bit more efficient, maybe, and we did a bunch of gigs with like one guitar. Uh, and I don't think I ever want to make that compromise again.
Mm.
Ever. I
It's
mean,
the
I
engine.
don't know if we're gonna commit to it right now on this podcast, but it is so, I mean, just for like, I feel like so much of the trance quality of this music comes from those interactions, right? It's so crucial. It's so special.
Yeah.
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 The so speaking of the the clave, like this is also an example where sometimes the guitar parts and the bass parts line up perfectly with the clave in a very obvious way. Other times it's more about how they don't line up and then do line up. It's kind of a juxtaposition where you're kind of plowing forward straight over the three side of the 3-2 or accenting the three side of the 3-2. Again, the three side being dat bat 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 bat. So in this song, there is a sort of obfuscating of the clave that happens, and it makes it a little more difficult to figure out what the clave actually is. And part of that is one of the guitar parts is not playing a clave really at all. It's a one dibba 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 and it's all kind of like two side, like two over and over and over. And the other guitar part is doing 2 2 3 2. Da, 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 da. Sorry, no, it's two
I
two
actually,
two three.
that's
So it's
so
like
interesting.
da, 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 da,
I hear a
da,
3-2
da,
in the
da.
tenor.
2 3. Yeah, it's like implied.
It's funny that you hear it so differently, that we're
I
both
think,
hearing that and hearing different claves in it.
but I think it's also it shows how powerful the concept of like no one part is like a source of truth. Like they're each a different puzzle piece that you need them all to get the full implication of where the clave is, you know? And I
Yeah,
feel like writing the music like that is really hard because as the composer, you're like, it's the here's the clave, like I'm gonna write the part to like the clave, but then to like take it that many steps further and be like, I'm gonna hide the clave. I'm gonna make the clave subtle. Like that you're using different values. I just learned this new term because my wife is taking a watercolor class. So in painting, value is like how light or dark a color is, and it implies distance. So if you're painting mountains, the lightest ones are the farthest back. And I feel like this clave in this the way that these two guitar parts are connecting, there's like a lot of shades of different value, like when like it is implying the clave and when it's not, you know.
There's
yeah.
it's funny that in Cuban music, especially salsa music, the clave is often like specifically determined, but I've heard a lot of really funny stories of major arguments that have broken out in bands in the compositional phase over which side they're feeling the clave.
Yeah.
And talking about nerdy guitar parts, I'm going to get nerdy on a whole other thing right now, which is something that I think about a lot, which is like, the idea of like, kind of I don't know, the ever long debate about like whether math is something that we created or discovered, right? And like going back to Pythagoras and such is just kind of like the language of the universe.
I was hoping we
I
would get to this at some point in our video series. Yeah.
Well, I fundamentally, well, I think math was discovered, but I also think clave was discovered. I think clave is something that is not created by us, or maybe discovered within ourselves, right? But I think it's something that is so ubiquitous across cultures, across the world, right? Like there's so many like clave conceptually, right, as this kind of like syncopation to straight, right? And this kind of call and response within itself, specifically with dance music, like across the world. It really feels like something that is you know, I guess it's different than math, but it's almost like the way that we love salt, right? Or that we love spiciness, or the way that we love like fat. You know what I mean? Like it's just something that it's in our biology uh, to
Hmm.
love. Um,
Well, that gets into like my idea that not my idea, but the idea that like rhythm, like all of life and the world and universe is rhythm. Even, and I say it's not my idea, but it's an idea I have subscribed to for decades now. Um, but just like including harmony and melody, it like all is rhythm, and all our everyday movements, the way things happen, it's all rhythm. We I can't get into it. I just can't get into it right now.
it's a it's a very drummer perspective to have, Miles.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm teasing you.
But there is like a concept of clave stuff with Afrobeat, and maybe outside of Chris Vadalaro, the former drummer of Antibalas, once talked to me about this, where if there's like a big clave that contributes even further to the interlockedness of parts in an Afrobeat song,
Mm.
where like if it's a 3/2 clave, then the big clave would be a halftime of whatever the regular clave is. So if it's like da 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 da, then the big clave would be da 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 da. And I like to dip into that concept sometimes when I'm writing horns for these types of songs, and this is happens to be a good example of it, where the horn parts of this song are kind of on the big clave. So let me play that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the anyway,
That's cool.
It's like a fractal.
It is.
You guys should check out, and anybody watching should check out. There is a documentary written and narrated by Arthur C. Clarke, the guy who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, about the Mandelbrot set. And the guy from Led Zeppelin, the guitar player, I'm losing his name now.
Jimmy Page?
Yes, did the score for it. And it's like fucking insane. And like, it'll be like this really dry description of like the math, and then it'll be like a 5-minute like multicolored like trip show with just like fucking like synths and guitar like going into the Mandelbrot set and like zooming in and zooming out.
What is the Mandelbrot set?
Oh my dude, you gotta watch. I'll link you. I already linked you guys a picture of where it felt like this podcast was going in the group chat that you should listen.
Oh God,
I can't look at it. I'm filming on my phone.
It's like the question of like, were claves like discovered or were they given to us by aliens? You know, it was like that vibe. But I'll send you guys the Mandelbrot set. It's like it's the shit. Anyway, sorry for the derailment.
I think
ancient
aliens would be a good direction for season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Colors of Infinity. Oh shit, this is the best. Okay, sorry, I just found it. I'll send it to you guys.
I love the title.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic of Fela influencing things, this song again is very Afrobeat influence, and typically what happens is I don't exactly know from what song. I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you.
We're back. I don't know what songs I'm drawing from, and then afterwards I kind of am like, when I'm doing the video podcast, I listen back. I'm like, oh, that's kind of like an ITT Fela Kuti thing. In terms of the chromatic, there's like a chromatic thing happening in this song where it's in terms of the horns, there's da 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 da. All that kind of thing, and then there's a lot of just like little stepwise motion as opposed to the sort of typical intervals. That is 100% traceable to this song by Fela. Can you see this? Yes, you can. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, like these horn parts are the holy grail of like throwing in wrenches and also doing these big gestural phrases that are like the bari sax is so loud in the mix, and it's just this. A lot of it came from this. I'm gonna play it. And then this line. So
yeah,
that type of line was 100% what was in my head when I wrote like this. Was it this? No.
Is it also what informed like the weird syncopated hits during the solo section, or did that come from a different place?
Definitely all coming from that, but specifically like just to get specific about the Pro Tools session stuff, this particular line, I felt so strongly about it that I doubled it with this mellotron. Uh, that let's see, there's one that's pretty nice, but then these two. So all
Mm,
together, and
nice.
that's
I
all just because
love
of Lekan Animashan, I think is his name, the Barry sax player of Fela Kuti. Just playing through one mic is equal to me recording a whole horn section and adding a mellotron. Just trying to get to that.
I'm really sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to call it. My head is pounding. Sorry.
No need to apologize.
See ya. See you when I see ya.
Bye,
Bye,
Jazz. Feel
Jazzy.
better.
Thank you.
Feel
Thank you.
better, buddy.
Thanks.
He couldn't handle the Barry, I think.
It was too
Was
much.
wasn't even sick before that, actually. It was just that Barry was so sick it infected him.
His head was just pounding from it. While we're on the topic of Barry, I gotta play you this Barry solo just because of, and we're gonna have Lynn on for the Dirt episode, but Lynn Ligamari, Barry extraordinaire and saxophone
Indeed.
extraordinaire. Um, but I got to have some fun with like plug-in stuff for the Barry for the solo, which she tracked live with us in the room when we recorded the basic tracks for this. And so I have these, the main Barry sax track is here, and then I have these two other tracks called Odd Barry, 1 and 2. And so I'll just solo each of those. Uh, and maybe I'll get a little bit granular with how it sounds without the plugins on. So here's the Barry with nothing on it. Oops, I gotta keep track of this. So that's that Barry with nothing on it. It's very quiet, but
It is quiet.
once you put on the compressor and the
That
decapitator,
overdrive. Decapitator. Love that.
and then in addition to that, we have hard panned on the left this guy, and on that on that track, we got a little sketch cassette with the with the preset called Spooky Keys, which basically is just adding all this saturation and it's adding all sorts of weird stuff. Most notably the dropouts where it kind of makes it drop out, and also on that track we got just a little bit of echo. So that's happening, and then on the right hand side is this, which is
When
putting the Barry through a guitar amp plugin, basically, and also
that's sick.
a little bit of echo. And so the combination of the two of them, without the original Barry yet, is sounds like this, and then adding the original Barry in.
That is cool. It
And you can
adds a
hear that
lot
it's,
of
sorry, what did you say?
no, it adds a lot of like dirt to the sound, right? It adds a lot of oomph.
Yeah.
Which I think, it's an interesting this kind of studio magic stuff I find so interesting because I almost feel like I feel like when I hear Lynn live playing, right? Maybe it's just the way the acoustics work in a sound, or maybe it's the energy of the room or whatnot, but the dirt is in her playing, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like there's like an aggressiveness and like a raspiness and a like a just harshness, like a positive harshness, right? That I think is like so good.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I think when you take that, it's hard to get. Like I don't know, I don't think if you recorded her in like the kind of sterile environment that is a studio. I mean, you didn't like, right? Like the original, the kind of like isolated Barry track does not have that, right? Um, and so it's almost like, I mean, obviously it's getting wilder in terms of like the echo and there's a lot of cool effect stuff going on there too, but I feel almost in spirit it it captures what it feels like to listen to her live, right? You're kind of
Mm.
taking these different paths to get back to the energy level that it has outside of like the sterile studio environment.
Yes. And part of the fun of being, of like producing while also being in the band or creating the music is that you can kind of hear a dry signal. You could hear a Barry playing through a microphone, and you, I'm just, you're thinking like, oh, that's gonna sound sick through this. And
Mm,
so in the room, it might not. It'd be like, okay, that was cool. Should we do another one? And I'm like, no, 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 that was perfect. Like once I do this, and then it's gonna be like perfect. Um, and so it is kind of like a. This is why I feel like musicians should record themselves,
mm.
because you get to experiment with stuff like this, and it's freeing in terms of when you actually are playing your instrument, just to know, if something in the moment isn't, it's just, it opens up all sorts of other ways to get at the thing you're trying to get out, you know,
Yeah.
and especially for something as steeped in like tradition, or like, it's just an instrument as classic as a horn, as a saxophone. Um, we're so used to hearing a saxophone clean as it sounds in person, but then once you throw things on it and process it, and it can actually bring out the personality of the player more than the instrument itself. Um, but you do got to be careful not to go too crazy, which I maybe went a little crazy sometimes. But the
I, you know,
yeah,
I don't know.
the fun thing about recording in this setting, where she was tracking it where the band is playing, and so when you throw these plugins on the Barry sax, you also hear all the background stuff, and so when you're listening to the solo with everything in, you it starts to feel less like there's an effect on the Barry, and you just hear these sort
Yeah, I
of
heard the
after
congas in
effects.
there too. I heard the congas being affected by at least some of the effects that you played in
Yeah,
there.
it starts to just feel like a color on everything.
And I think that's the crucial thing. And it's possible that you and I just have tastes that are aligned. It would make sense. We've been making music together for many, many years. But I think that like what I appreciate about you as a producer is that I never feel there's always like an end in mind, right? It's not like you're getting into like fancy production stuff or plugins or effects
Yeah,
because, you spent some money on a new plugin and you're looking for an excuse to use it. I feel like it's always you do a good job of not falling into that kind of like overuse of effects and such, right? In this music, especially in this music, right? Because I think so much of this, there's a lot of bands where I feel like the the quintessential, like the identifying sound of the band is the studio sound, right?
Mhm.
And then they take it to a stage and then they have to try to figure out how to recreate that. And I feel like our band, the sound is the live sound,
Mhm.
right? Like that is the identity of the band. And then we have to go into a studio and try to not figure out how to recreate just the sound that's on the stage, but recreate what the energy, like what it feels like to be playing this music live, right?
Yeah.
And the energy of the room and the energy of 10 people on stage just making a whole lot of fucking sound and the energy of the audience dancing. You know what I mean? And I think the way you use these plugins really feels intentional to get there. Or maybe that's just what it does for me personally when I'm listening to it. But
Well, you're
um,
hitting on, I think, what was one of the, if not the identity crisis of MFA when we were like in like the we were making the self-titled album,
mhm.
was this notion of how what does an MFA album sound like? And everything before that, Good Future and everything, was always like, let's play the song in the room, let's go play it out on stage, and then let's take it to the studio and play it. And then produce working with a producer like Dan Nobler, he knew how to add effects and sort of like add color and shape to a lot of those sounds. But like inherently it was a band playing in the room. And then when we tracked the self-titled album the same way, but then we sort of discovered production in the process, and it was like this whole thing of, well, maybe we shorten that horn solo, maybe we like mute the drums and totally go like a different direction of from how we recorded it. And we went down that many rabbit holes, and then afterwards it was like, how are we going to play this live? Oh, well, let's get some electronics on stage, let's have
Yeah.
this extra crazy setup. And ultimately it we were sort of on this path of like learning together about how does a band like this sound live, how does it sound on an album. And back then I wasn't producing like I am now. Like I wasn't at the controls. I didn't know what plugins even really were. Like, so and we worked with Jacob Bloomberg to we tried out all sorts of things, and he really helped us like go down all of these mixing rabbit holes. And ultimately now, here years later, I now can produce my own music, and I can draw from those producers that we worked with back then who did certain moves. And also I can sort of think like, this song is going to sound different than it will live, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
this is the studio version. Now it's not too sterile. We can't put out a thing that's sterile, that's for sure. But can it live on its own as a studio version, that still, like you said, gets at the feeling of a 10-piece band live?
Hmm.
This has been one of the joys of making this record, of making Forward, has been kind of, those the scenes in like superhero movies when like they get their power and they're like and they're like, ah, like, I guess I'm doing Spider-Man. But like, yeah, it's kind of like us as a band being like, oh, like, we've learned from all this perspective and years of
Yeah.
going through it, and now we know what to do. Oh,
Yeah.
this,
It's
yeah.
it's the third act where we've realized, and it's I think we had power back then too, but it was
Oh yeah.
definitely a very uncertain, right? There was a lot of, I think it's also a factor of age too, right? Like I think just being in your early 20s is just an inherently more angsty and uncertain time. I'm so freaking happy to be making this music. I like this music so much, and I like the people I'm making with so much. Um, it's an incredible blessing. And I like this album so much. I loved the self-titled album too as an album. I actually
Yeah.
feel that bringing the self-titled album live, we eventually got it, I think, but I think that
Yeah.
was probably I actually love the self-titled album as a listening experience. I think some of those early shows were more stilted
Hmm.
than MFA is naturally. And I think this era is so, yeah, it's really cool. I'm really excited about it. There's
Yeah.
something there's something in this track that I absolutely love that I want to ask you about,
Okay.
which is your kind of like drum solo tempo shift,
Mm.
right? And I want to know a little bit more about like the inspiration for that, where your head was at for that. I remember recording it was very interesting because we didn't record this as a full band, right? So we kind of had to like really trust ourselves and it was just a I don't know. It was a fascinating recording experience, but I also love it live. Like, I think it's such a magic trick that, like, these parts, like, I'm thinking of the guitar parts specifically, right? And kind of the song in general, like the horn head works so well up tempo. And then they also work so well down tempo and like we kind of got to have our cake and eat it too. And
Hmm.
in the middle of the song, if you've never heard it, it feels like a magic trick because all of a sudden you're hearing the same song from a different perspective and it has a whole different groove and a whole different like character to it. And I just love it as a creative choice. So I'm curious what inspired it, where your head was at, if it was like something that was also super obvious or that you kind of struggled with.
I think part of it was going back to the first thing we talked about was that the original demo that I drew this guitar out of was slow.
Yeah, it was
Um,
down tempo. Yeah, for sure.
so sorry. Let me play
Yeah.
So I knew that that guitar part felt good at that tempo, and so I don't remember how conscious of a thing it was, but I think it was like this guitar part. It's all so fast, it's all moving, but then if we were to slow it down, like there's proof that like that there's something there too. So I think this is like just one of those things that I can't quite describe how it happened, but um, it was just an idea I had. And again, I was in my apartment in quarantine making it on GarageBand, so I didn't have my
So you
drums.
did so you did the whole down tempo thing like with MIDI horns and stuff.
Yeah, you could even see that the
Because I think that like ba ba ba
yeah
ba da ba da ba da ba 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 ba. Like that whole thing has
yeah
so much swagger to it, and I can't like. Did it have swagger with MIDI horns, or was
I
it
have
just
to
like?
I have to
Could you
play it for
have
you.
it? I gotta
Yeah,
hear it.
it's a hot mess, but you can see that this up here is the original demo that I made on GarageBand, and it's the
Mm.
same. We literally, when we tracked the song for real, we tracked it to that demo. So I like the demo from May 30th, 2020. It was the whole arrangement was set, and that's what made it all the way to the end. And the ending horns are crazy. Here they are.
I mean, it's not. It doesn't have the swagger that the live horns has, but it's there.
The ending's pretty funny too.
MIDI horns. You love to hear it.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That's really. And then so when you recorded the drum
Let me just
solo.
play. Let me just play the final version now.
Oh
Just,
yeah,
just
yeah,
to
yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah. True, true, true. Yeah,
juxtapose.
yeah.
And real quick, Pro Tools note: something that really hooked up this part. It's rare that a plugin can really like hook something up so hard, but this like I decided to put a horn echo track in there that really made the groove happen on the tail ends of these phrases. So like
Mm. Mm.
those little tails.
Yeah.
You can see that that it goes down here, and then it slowly comes up. And
Yeah, it
it's a
just gives it
weird.
a little extra bounce.
It gives it a little extra bounce, and like with you, if like let me play. Oh, see, this is a part I labored over a little bit. You can see I muted the congas in this part. Um, just the echo just adds that thing. And speaking of echo, this also the echo on the drums is adding to the feel where this Galaxy tape echo tape echo uh, tape echo plugin is giving the and this was I remember this when this happened it was an accident. I didn't know what was really happening, but like I didn't touch it. Where the Galaxy Tape Echo just kind of found the right tempo to make it sound good. Um, you can hear it in the left ear. So there's a lot of like it's kind of
Yeah.
filling in that space in a nice funky way.
Oh man. It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing as someone who has not produced music, right? To see like this interface which is so technical and then you get a groove out of it like that. It's just like a really interesting juxtaposition to me. It continues to be, it's nothing new, but it continues to be a really interesting juxtaposition to me.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of not like, turning a bunch of knobs and pressing a bunch of buttons and sometimes battling like an interface for a while to then create something that feels so groovy and natural.
Yeah. Well, that is also a story of this record that I think is coming out through these video podcast things that like there it was not us all getting in the room to record all together, but it was a series of small groups of us kind of finding that we can make something lively and like with that magical feeling by piecing it together. And so at the beginning of this process, I remember we were when we were talking about making a new record, it was like we were making plans of trying to book a studio out and go and all play together, or maybe we could do it piecemeal. But I think we were also scared to do it, or not scared, but hesitant to do it piecemeal because sometimes that doesn't capture magic. That
Yeah.
and so we slowly were finding that we would have these little sessions and it would be a blast and it would sound really good and be like, oh, well, maybe this will work. And this, going back to the drum solo, we literally tracked along to these stems up here are my stems from
From the garage band thing, right?
GarageBand. And
Yeah.
that's what we tracked to. And so my drum solo, the reason why I was able to track it was because I had these percussion tracks.
Yeah, this clave or the wood block.
Yeah. And they were slowing down.
Yeah.
So we were listening to that and I tracked the drum solo to that following that. Sorry. Sorry. You could hear, or in our headphones, we had that initial guide from the
Yeah.
percussion. So that's just an example of like, on paper, it sounds like it'd be really difficult to track along to a garage band, to garage band stems and somehow come out with something that feels like organic in any
Yeah.
way. But we kind of just tried it and it was like, oh, yeah, it kind of worked. And then learning how to massage and, you know, color things and edit things, which we were talking about before, in a way that's like, all right, this now the GarageBand file is in the rear view. Now we have a living, breathing song that could be on this record. Oh, and I should probably mention for all the plugin heads, there's really every time I do this on these, I'm like a little embarrassed because I really don't use many plugins at all. It's just it's like I want to be that person that's like I got the 245 and a bit of, on the AC. I use the ACs all the time, but instead I'm like, shit. I have like okay, this is a limiter, this is an EQ. I put a phaser on it and an echo. Um, and it's just, automating, writing these things so they have an arc over time. And that's it. So that was for the plugin heads. Um, Sorry to give you nothing.
They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. I think maybe I'll just touch on we haven't talked about transitions between songs at all, but for like
Mm.
the real like close listeners, you'll hear that there are little bridges from tune to tune, and I I didn't want to. I think when you're making an album, it's like either you're making an album where the songs lead into each other or not, but you don't want to try too hard to reverse engineer that. But I think there is a fine line to like creating transitions that it's not like this is a concept album, but it's choosing when there is silence between songs and when there is not. And or maybe the album is there's silence between every song, and there's like a classic to that, but like
Yeah.
it's a part of making a record that is so fun to me. And again, it's like it's not like one song is slowly like morphing into the next song and then the track changes, but the song ends and then it's like, okay, how maybe silence makes sense here, or maybe it makes sense to have a track labeled birds and then also whatever this is. Sorry, I'm going to raise that up. I can't even hear it.
Are those geese?
I'm going to raise it up again.
Are there like hidden, is there a hidden goose in this album?
Let's see, what is even happening? Yes. Birds?
Sounds like a ghostly singing and a goose that does not care about the ghostly singing.
A
Like
ghostly goose?
It's like a no, not a ghostly goose. It's like
Oh,
there's a
sorry.
haunted house, and then there's just like a couple geese there that could not be bothered by the ghouls and the ghosts that are trying
Well,
to
and there's
haunt them.
birds, there's reverse birds.
That's
So there's that. No, what this is I knew that the song Leftover would be coming next. And so what I did was I took the melody,
mm.
which is a melody from the next song. Da, 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 da. I pitched it down, and I knew that the next song would be starting with a little, let's see, a Farfisa thing, I think. So the next song starts with that. So I took some things and sorry, everything's so quiet because it's meant to be quiet, but it's not good for this setting. Okay, here we go.
It even like brings in like the bass and the bass and the
Exactly.
conga that's gonna be coming in very soon as well.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So all together, we have a transition. Let's see. And that's it. And again, it's
Can you play the end? Is it possible to listen to just like the final notes into the
yeah,
opening notes?
yeah. So the next song goes.
That, it's crazy hearing it in context. I mean, that's obviously much louder than it is on the record, but now
Yeah.
hearing it in context, I recognize that I've heard this before. But
Yeah.
moments ago, like had you told me, is this on the like I was listening to this being like, this is on the record? I've never heard this before in my life. But
Yeah.
it's a very subconscious thing, right? Like I never like the birds, hearing the birds come in as the song is ending and hearing like the kind of like Farfisa come in and the little melody. It's all familiar to me. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's trippy. I had no idea. I consciously had no idea that was there.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Love a little transition, and again, that's really for the people in headphones. Um, it's these are little garnishes on the album that to me, like, is it gonna change everything? No, but it's like a thing that I can look back on when I'm like 75 and be like, I remember that Reverse Birds track that really hooked it up.
That it's funny because you actually just kind of touched on something like a question I just had,
Hmm.
which is like, we're gonna end this podcast pretty soon, right? You're gonna close this
Right.
session. Is this session, do you go back to these sessions at all, or is this session gonna close now and potentially stay closed until you're 75 and want to hear that Birds track again?
God.
Like, have you reopened old sessions before, or now is this kind of like these podcast, I mean, I don't know, not to get
This is
all
it. This is
sentimental
it.
about it, but like these podcasts as we open these sessions, right? I imagine they're going to be closed and then the songs are going to live as they are on the record.
Yeah. No, this is it. This is like the opportunity to open these up and look back, because this is part of why this is fun to do, is that once you release a song, it's set, and you forever just hear the final song. And
Yeah.
but to go back and like kind of relive how this song came to be and also just how it was recorded, it's like I feel a mixture of like, God, I'm so happy that it just seems like so much work in retrospect. Even though in the moment I'm just like plowing forward, but now I'm like, God, I'm so glad that that work is over and we did it and it's out. And then also it's like, wow, we're gonna have to do this all over again with the next record.
Yeah.
But these are also the things that, I mean, people, it's an opportunity to celebrate these little things, these little ingredients. It's like taking the cilantro when you're making guacamole and being like, here's where this cilantro came from. It was shipped from blah 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 blah, and like and going into depth about where the cilantro, like, why it is shaped how it's shaped, and what was done to make it, and why it is even in the guacamole, and do you even like cilantro? Does it need cilantro? It's like, I just started another video podcast, which would be going into depth about ingredients of of in the kitchen.
Specifically dips.
Dips.
Only dips.
All right. Well, I think we hit a lot of stuff. This song is a classic MFA. As you can hear, there's a lot of classic nostalgic feeling to it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it is very much taking that
I can't
and
remember, was it
it
you?
living in the now.
I think you called it the new birthday man, and that resonated with me. It does feel
Yes.
like the new
Yes.
birthday man, which is as classic and nostalgic as a Mefe gets, pretty much.
Yes.
But that rang true to me.
Before we go, since you're here, I gotta just solo these congas at the beginning because they're so epic.
I love the conga sounds on this record.
Yeah.
Like they sound very unique. I feel like well, we might just add like another half hour to this and we're gonna wrap it up. But I feel like
We'll wrap it up.
congas sound pretty samey across a lot of music, you know? Like
Yeah.
they tend to be like recorded clean and, have like a very specific warm tone, you know? And those congas do not sound warm. They sound fierce, you know? And I think that is such a cool choice. You know what I mean? I don't know. I love the way the congas sound all over this album. I love the way
Yeah.
the solo sounds on
Afterward.
Afterward.
Yeah.
It's just it's epic and it's unique and it
Future
feels like
episode.
it's yeah. It feels like it's tapping into something that's not really, or I haven't heard explore. I'm sure people are doing it all over the place and I'm just ignorant to it. But at least in the music that I listen to, people don't really play around with conga sounds very much. And I like it a lot. I like it in this song. I like it in the other songs too.
I'm glad.
Well, Miles, it was a pleasure chatting with you this evening.
Pleasure chatting with you too, and all of you out there.
Yeah, although, you know, feel free to chime in next time, you know, to all the people out there.
Yeah. Call in.
Call in. Yeah.
We haven't gotten any calls yet.
Yeah,
but,
the lines happen. I have the whole switchboard here, not a single light. Yeah.
we have to give out the number. That's, I think,
know.
our main problem.
I think that's a real key error in this situation.
All right, next time, call an episode. But for now, fast bump.
Yeah. That's a wrap.
Bye.
Bye.